I never expected my quiet suburban life would explode into chaos. Certainly not when the HOA apparently decided to torch my barn with a flamethrower, completely oblivious, or perhaps entirely aware that they'd just declared war on a federal government detective with access to significant resources. The question became, how far would I go to expose the sinister conspiracy hiding just beneath the surface of our community's perfectly manicured lawns? The sound of knocking jolted me awake. This wasn't a gentle, friendly rap, but the sharp, demanding kind that invariably signals trouble. Groggily, I grabbed my robe and stumbled towards the door, my brain still foggy from working late on a complex government fraud case. When I opened it, Beatrice Sterling stood poised on my porch. Her lips were pinched so tight, she looked like she'd just bitten into a particularly sour lemon. Furthermore, she hugged a giant clipboard against her chest like a piece of makeshift armor. "Good morning, Mr. Donovan," she announced, though absolutely nothing in her crisp, clipped voice suggested she wished me a good anything. "I'm here on official Pinewood Gardens HOA business." I rubbed the sleep from my eyes. After 3 years living here, I recognized trouble the moment I saw it. And Beatrice wasn't just any neighbor. Indeed, she ruled our community with an iron fist cleverly disguised in expensive designer gloves. "What can I help you with, Beatrice?" I asked, keeping my voice meticulously even. Professional. 15 years as a financial crimes detective had taught me one crucial lesson: never show weakness to potential trouble. "That I saw," she declared, pointing with perfectly manicured nails toward my backyard, "your barn. It blatantly violates Section 7.3 of our community guidelines regarding acceptable structures." My grandfather's barn had stood proudly on this property for 67 years. Critically, when developers bought the surrounding farmland and carved out Pinewood Gardens, my deed included a special addendum, a grandfather clause specifically allowing the barn to remain. I'd already explained this patiently to Beatrice twice before. "We've been through this, Beatrice," I sighed. "The barn is protected under the original property agreement." She flipped dismissively through pages on her clipboard. "The board has reconsidered," she countered smoothly. "That clause, we've determined, only applied to the original owner, not to subsequent purchasers like yourself." This was an outright lie. Before buying, I had meticulously checked every single document with my lawyer, Ben Carter. "I have the legal paperwork that proves otherwise," I stated calmly. "Well, paperwork can be wrong," she sniffed. "Regardless, the board has issued 3 formal warnings already. This was certainly news to me. I never received any warnings." Beatrice's eyes narrowed fractionally. "Perhaps," she suggested coolly, "you should check your mail more regularly, Mr. Donovan. We can't be held responsible if you're too preoccupied with your job to read official notices." The way she spat out the word job made the hairs on my neck rise. Most neighbors assumed I worked a mundane office administration job. Very few knew I actually investigated sophisticated financial criminals for the Treasury Department, work that often took me away from home for weeks at a time. "The barn stays, Beatrice," I said firmly. "I have legal documentation." She offered a tight, unpleasant smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We voted. You have precisely 72 hours to demolish that structure, or the HOA will be forced to take action. We've been extraordinarily patient." Across the street, I noticed Beatrice's husband, Arthur Sterling, watching us intently. Unlike his wife's barely concealed animated anger, his face remained completely blank, unreadable. Their perfect lawn stretched between our properties like a pristine green moat. Arthur stood utterly still, hands jammed in his pockets, merely observing. My detective instincts began humming insistently. Something wasn't right here. I'll need to see copies of these supposed warnings you mentioned, I said. Beatrice's smile tightened further. Check your files. The decision is final. 72 hours, Mr. Donovan. As she pivoted and walked away with stiff-backed righteousness, my elderly neighbor, Agnes Peterson, waved cautiously from her garden next door. Once Beatrice was safely out of earshot, Agnes hurried over, still clutching her gardening shears. I couldn't help overhearing, she whispered, her voice low and urgent. Be careful with that woman, Jack. Last month, the Wilsons refused to take down their basketball hoop. 2 days later, mysteriously, all 4 of their car tires were slashed. No proof it was connected, of course, she added quickly. Thanks for the warning, Agnes, I said, watching Beatrice's rigid back as she returned to her house, where Arthur waited, still watching, still unnervingly still. Inside, I immediately called my lawyer, Ben Carter. After explaining the escalating situation, he sounded genuinely worried. This is concerning, Jack. That grandfather clause is absolutely ironclad. Legally, there's no way they can force removal. Then why the sudden, aggressive push? I wondered aloud. Hard to say, Ben mused. Have you done anything recently to upset the HOA? I thought back. Nothing unusual. Actually, I've been away on a case for the last 3 weeks. Just got back yesterday. Now that's interesting timing, Ben noted. Send me copies of the supposed warnings if they ever turn up. Meanwhile, install some good security cameras around the barn. Document absolutely everything. After hanging up, I meticulously dug through 3 weeks' worth of accumulated mail. Predictably, there were no warnings from the HOA. Either Beatrice was blatantly lying, or someone had intercepted and removed them before I could see them. I spent the rest of the afternoon installing high-resolution security cameras, carefully pointing them at both the barn and my front door. While mounting the last camera, I noticed Arthur Sterling watching me intently from their upstairs window. When our eyes met, he didn't turn away. He just kept staring with that same blank, unsettling expression. That evening, I received an email from Beatrice with an attachment ominously labeled Final Warning. The document looked superficially official, but crucially lacked the HOA attorney's signature that should have been present. Before I could even formulate a response, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my supervisor at the Treasury Department, Director Miller. Jack, we may have a problem, Director Miller said, without preamble. Someone's been asking questions about your current case. My heart quickened noticeably. I'd been deep into investigating a complex money laundering operation involving shady real estate developments across 3 counties. What kind of questions? Someone tried to access your case files using outdated department credentials, he explained. The system flagged it immediately. Any idea who might be trying to figure out what you're working on? No, I said slowly, my gaze drifting towards the Sterling house, where lights now glowed warmly from their kitchen window. But I might have an idea where to start looking. After we hung up, a sense of unease propelled me towards my barn. The old structure wasn't just sentimental. It housed a small, secure office where I kept encrypted backups of critical case notes. As I approached, motion-activated floodlights suddenly illuminated the path. The heavy padlock on the barn door hung open, swinging slightly in the gentle night breeze. I froze. Someone had definitely been inside. Drawing my off-duty weapon, I cautiously pushed the wide door open. At first glance, nothing seemed disturbed. My files appeared untouched. However, then I saw it. A small, unfamiliar red light, blinking rhythmically from behind a stack of hay bales, something that absolutely hadn't been there this morning. Moving closer, I discovered a small electronic device fitted with a tiny antenna. It was clearly a tracker, most likely combined with a listening device. Just as I reached down to examine it more closely, powerful headlights swept across the barn entrance. A car pulled abruptly into my driveway. Peering through the dusty barn window, I watched as Arthur Sterling stepped out, alone. He looked around nervously, almost furtively, before approaching my front door. What on earth did Beatrice's husband want at 10 p.m.? And more importantly, why did he look so drastically different now? Visibly afraid instead of disturbingly blank-faced? I quickly slipped the electronic device into my pocket and moved silently towards the barn door, suddenly unsure whether I was facing an imminent threat or perhaps about to uncover what was really happening in Pinewood Gardens. Flames suddenly erupted, shooting violently into the night sky, turning the inky darkness into an angry, pulsating orange glow. The intense heat slapped my face as I sprinted across my backyard, clad only in pajamas and bare feet. "Stop! What are you doing?" I shouted, horrified. My beloved barn, my grandfather's legacy, was burning furiously. 3 figures stood starkly silhouetted against the raging inferno. I recognized them instantly. Beatrice Sterling, her known right-hand man, Carl Jenkins, and Brenda Mills, the HOA treasurer. Carl held what looked disturbingly like a modified garden tool, a common weed torch, dangerously converted into something far more powerful, essentially a makeshift flamethrower. "Call 911!" I yelled frantically towards Agnes's house next door. My elderly neighbor had awakened me only minutes before, pounding desperately on my door around 2 a.m. "They're burning your barn, Jack! Hurry!" she'd gasped, still in her nightgown, raw fear making her voice shake uncontrollably. Now, facing the arsonists directly, I felt something vital snap inside me. This wasn't just mindless property damage. This was deeply personal, deliberately criminal. "What have you done?" I demanded, advancing on the trio. Beatrice turned, her face eerily illuminated by the firelight, glowing not with shame or fear, but with a chilling, palpable satisfaction. "Oh, look who's finally awake," she said, her voice dripping with fake syrupy sweetness. "This, my dear detective, is precisely what happens when you foolishly challenge the HOA." I stopped cold. "Detective?" I'd meticulously never told anyone in Pinewood Gardens about my real job. As far as my neighbors knew, I worked a boring, nondescript desk job for the government. "Surprised?" Carl Jenkins laughed, the flames reflecting ominously in his glasses. "We know exactly who you are, Mr. Donovan, and we know what you do. The real question is, does your precious government agency know about your lucrative little side business?" Side business? I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. "You're committing a serious crime," I stated, my training kicking in despite the shock. "Arson is a major felony. The police are on their way." "Are they?" Brenda Mills spoke for the first time, checking her watch with unnerving casualness. "That's strange. I called them myself 20 minutes ago about a dangerous fire you apparently started. They really should be here by now." My mind raced frantically. They were framing me, but why? What could possibly be worth this level of extreme risk? Behind me, Agnes's voice called out clearly, "The fire department is coming. I called them." Beatrice's smug smile faltered, just slightly. "We should go," she murmured quickly to the others. As they turned to leave, I impulsively grabbed Carl's arm. "Why are you doing this?" For a fleeting second, something akin to genuine fear flickered across his face. "You should have just sold the property when we made the offer last year," he hissed. "Now it's simply too late." "I never received any offer." Carl jerked his arm free violently. "Ask your real estate agent why. Not our problem now." My agent, Lisa Evans, had moved away suddenly about 6 months after I purchased the property. No forwarding address, no explanation. The barn's heavy roof groaned ominously, then collapsed inward with a deafening roar, sending a brilliant shower of sparks high into the sky. I stumbled back from the overwhelming intensity of the heat, my mind spinning uncontrollably. Inside that burning structure was my small office, the place where I'd kept those crucial backup files for my current money laundering investigation. In the distance, sirens wailed, growing steadily louder. Beatrice and her accomplices walked calmly towards the street, moving with the casual air of people merely finishing a friendly neighborhood visit. "You won't get away with this," I yelled after them, feeling utterly helpless. Beatrice turned back, her face now unexpectedly serious. "We already have, Mr. Donovan," she stated flatly. "Check your email. The HOA meticulously documented your repeated violations of local fire codes. We even tried to stop you from burning trash illegally tonight, but alas, we arrived too late. So very sad." As they disappeared into the night, I stood paralyzed, watching decades of family history and childhood memories burn ferociously before my eyes. The fire department arrived minutes later, but it was far too late to save the structure. All they could effectively do was prevent the fire from spreading to my house. "Any idea how it started?" the fire captain asked, after they'd finally contained the blaze, his face smudged with soot. "Yes, 3 members of my HOA did this. I have a witness." He looked deeply skeptical. "Sir, we received reports that you were burning trash illegally and it got out of control." "That's a lie. I was asleep when this started. My neighbor Agnes woke me up." "Is this your neighbor?" "Yes," he asked, pointing to where Agnes stood nearby, wrapped tightly in a blanket, talking quietly to a police officer. I hurried over. "Agnes, tell them what you saw." Her eyes were wide, undeniably frightened. I just saw the fire from my window and came over to wake Jack," she stammered. I didn't see how it started." My jaw dropped. "But you said—" "I'm sorry, Jack. I was confused. It was so dark," she mumbled, refusing to meet my eyes. The police officer beside her closed his notebook with an air of finality. "Sir," the officer addressed me formally, "we've received prior documentation from your HOA regarding previous warnings issued to you about fire hazards on your property." "Those are fake. They're setting me up," I insisted desperately. The officer exchanged a knowing glance with the fire captain. "We'll investigate, sir," the officer said placatingly, "but right now, there's no physical evidence supporting your claim. Do you have working smoke detectors inside your home? The fire marshal will need to conduct an inspection." Unbelievably, I was being treated like the prime suspect. "I want to file charges against Beatrice Sterling, Carl Jenkins, and Brenda Mills for arson." "We'll certainly take your statement, sir," the officer replied, his tone clearly unconvinced. As the emergency personnel continued their work, I noticed Arthur Sterling standing silently at the edge of my property, hands buried deep in the pockets of his bathrobe. Unlike the others, he seemed genuinely troubled by the fire. His face was lined with what looked suspiciously like authentic worry. When our eyes inevitably met, he quickly turned away, heading back toward his own house. By sunrise, the firefighters had finally departed. The barn was nothing more than a pile of charred wood and blackened ashes. I stood numbly in rubber boots, sifting through the damp, smoking debris, searching for anything salvageable. My hidden case files were gone. The locked, fire-resistant file cabinet had melted into a useless lump from the intense heat. "Jack?" A soft voice spoke unexpectedly behind me. I turned to find Agnes, looking small and terribly afraid in the stark morning light. "Why did you lie to the police, Agnes?" I asked, unable to keep the deep hurt from my voice. "They threatened my grandson, Ethan," she whispered, glancing around nervously, as if expecting eavesdroppers. "Carl came to my door right after I called you. He said if I told anyone what I really saw, they'd make absolutely sure Ethan lost his university scholarship." "Ethan?" was Agnes's only grandchild, attending college on a full academic scholarship, her immense pride and joy. How could they possibly affect his scholarship? I asked, bewildered. Beatrice's brother, she explained haltingly, sits on the university's board of trustees. Please understand, Jack. I felt I had no choice. My anger softened slightly. It's okay, Agnes. I don't blame you. There's something else, she added, her voice dropping even lower. This isn't the first suspicious fire. The Garcias' shed burned down mysteriously last year, right after they fought the HOA about their new fence height. Everyone just assumed it was a tragic accident at the time. But why are they targeting me specifically? I don't know, Agnes began, but she stopped abruptly, her eyes widening in sudden alarm as she looked past me. I turned to see Arthur Sterling approaching slowly, hands still characteristically jammed in his pockets. You should go, Agnes, I said quietly. She nodded quickly, hurrying away without another word. Arthur waited patiently until she was gone, before speaking. I'm truly sorry about your barn, Jack, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, almost apologetic. Your wife did this, I stated flatly, the accusation hanging heavy in the air. He winced visibly. I know. That's why I'm here. He pulled something small from his pocket. It was a standard USB flash drive. This belongs to you. I took it from your office in the barn yesterday. I stared at him, a fresh wave of rage building inside me. You broke in? To save this, he clarified quickly, holding out the drive. Beatrice would have destroyed it instantly. She doesn't know I have it. Why would you help me? I demanded, utterly perplexed. Arthur glanced nervously toward his own house. Because, he admitted quietly, I can't stop her anymore. But maybe you can. He pressed the drive firmly into my hand. There's a very specific reason they want your property so badly, Jack. It's not really about the barn or petty HOA rules. Then what is it? Look under it, he replied cryptically. With that perplexing message, he turned abruptly to leave. Arthur, I called after him, what happens when Beatrice discovers you took this? His smile was faint and incredibly sad. Nothing good, he murmured, walking away, his shoulders visibly hunched. I looked down at the small drive nestled in my palm, then back at the still smoking ruins of my grandfather's barn. What exactly was hidden beneath this property that made it worth committing arson, framing, and potentially much worse? And why, against all logic, did Arthur Sterling just risk everything to help me find out? And smoke stung my eyes as firefighters battled the last stubborn flames. My beautiful, historic barn was gone. Decades of history, countless memories turned to ash in mere minutes. Through the lingering chaos, I spotted Beatrice speaking animatedly with the fire chief, her expensive designer shoes somehow remaining immaculately spotless despite the muddy, waterlogged scene. It was clearly an illegal burn pit he was operating, she announced loudly, gesturing accusingly at me. We've warned him repeatedly about the inherent fire hazards. The chief nodded gravely, scribbling notes onto his clipboard. I tried desperately to interrupt, to protest, but a firefighter simply handed me a citation for violating local burn ordinances. Unbelievable. They were actually completely buying Beatrice's blatant lies. You can't just make up stories, I shouted furiously across the yard. You did this. I saw you. Beatrice's face hardened instantly. Be careful throwing around such wild, unfounded accusations, detective, she warned, her voice dangerously low. Stress can make people say the craziest things. She offered the chief a saccharine smile. Poor man, just works too hard, I suppose. My stomach plummeted. Detective? How did she know? As the emergency vehicles finally pulled away, leaving me utterly alone with the smoldering ruins, I finally fell to my knees, overwhelmed. Everything felt lost. Case files, irreplaceable family photos, my grandfather's cherished tools, all gone. I punched the charred earth in frustration, my knuckles coming away blackened and sore. Suddenly, something glinted faintly among the ashes. A small metal case, partially melted but miraculously intact. I definitely hadn't put it there. Inside, nestled securely, was another flash drive labeled simply Pinewood Finances, accompanied by a folded note. Not safe. Trust no one. I was hoping that survived. I whirled around, startled. Agnes stood directly behind me, arms crossed, her expression completely unreadable, absolutely not the friendly, slightly dithering elderly neighbor I thought I knew. You put this here? When? How? I clutched the new drive, suddenly deeply suspicious. 3 days ago, I picked your lock, she stated calmly, kneeling beside me, her voice dropping conspiratorially. I'm with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, Jack. We've been actively watching Pinewood Gardens for over 8 months. I laughed bitterly, incredulously. Come on, Agnes, this is a boring suburb, populated by power-hungry garden Nazis, not some sophisticated criminal enterprise. Ed. Agnes grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong, steel-like. The HOA collects over $500,000 annually from residents in dues and fees alone. Where does all that money actually go? Certainly not to community improvements. Their official books show massive, recurring expenditures for consulting services never rendered. Payments made to opaque shell companies. It's classic money laundering, Jack, I whispered, my professional instincts finally kicking in hard despite the overwhelming shock. Exactly, Agnes confirmed grimly. And the barn burning wasn't random. Beatrice somehow found out who you really work for. A distinct chill ran through me. I've told absolutely no one in this neighborhood about my job. Someone told her, Agnes stated firmly. We strongly believe there's a significant leak within your agency, Jack. Someone is feeding critical information directly to investigation targets. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. It was a text message from my supervisor, Director Miller. Report to HQ immediately. Credentials suspended pending internal investigation. Agnes glanced knowingly at my screen. Right on schedule. They're moving incredibly fast. Why tell me all this now? I asked, struggling desperately to process everything. Because you're blown, Jack, and you're in serious danger, she explained urgently. Because I need help from someone who understands complex financial investigations from the inside. And because, she hesitated, her gaze softening slightly, watching your barn burn, I realized they're escalating rapidly. People who start asking inconvenient questions about Beatrice Sterling and the HOA finances have a disturbing habit of facing unfortunate accidents. She handed me a thin folder. Thomas Lynn questioned association fees last year. Soon after, his car suffered a catastrophic brake failure. Sarah Wilson filed a formal complaint about missing funds. She experienced a mysterious gas leak in her home while she slept. Cold, hard fear settled deep in my stomach. They're killing people over an HOA scam? This goes much deeper than just homeowner fees, Jack, Agnes stated gravely. She pulled out her own phone, showing me clear surveillance photos. Beatrice meeting discreetly with well-dressed, serious-looking men in expensive cars, unmarked packages being exchanged. We think Pinewood Gardens is just one small piece of a much larger, more dangerous puzzle. The puzzle pieces started rapidly connecting in my mind, just as headlights suddenly swung into my driveway. A black SUV with official government plates rolled to a stop. That's not your backup, is it? I asked urgently. Agnes's face went pale. No, we need to go now. Where? Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can properly examine that drive. Somewhere they won't think to look. As we slipped quickly into the dense woods bordering the back of my property, I glanced back one last time at my house. Would I ever see it again? And more importantly, who could I really trust now, when my own agency might be fatally compromised? The SUV doors opened ominously. Men in dark suits emerged, weapons clearly visible beneath their jackets. One spoke urgently into a radio, his eyes scanning the tree line where we were hastily concealing ourselves. "This isn't just about money anymore, is it?" I whispered, the terrifying reality sinking in. Agnes's expression was grim. "No, Jack. What would you say if I told you Beatrice Sterling isn't actually named Beatrice Sterling?" "Get down!" Agnes suddenly yanked me forcefully behind a large fallen tree as bright flashlight beams swept the forest floor nearby. The government agents were less than 20 feet away now, their radios crackling with clipped updates. Subject residence clear, proceeding to secondary locations. For 3 agonizing hours, we crawled through thick mud and thorny underbrush, using every evasion trick I'd learned during my field training years ago. Finally, exhausted and scratched, we reached a dilapidated, abandoned hunting cabin Agnes knew about. Remote, no electricity, no running water, and crucially, no chance of electronic surveillance. "Elena Volkov," Agnes said quietly, lighting an old kerosene lantern that cast flickering shadows on the rough cabin walls. "That's Beatrice's real name. Russian intelligence. Supposedly inactive since 2008, or so everyone thought." I laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. I couldn't help it. My annoying, power-tripping HOA president is a former Russian spy? Agnes, this is completely insane. "What's truly insane," Agnes countered sharply, "is how perfectly suited HOAs are for cover operations. Think about it. They control private security patrols, approve all home modifications, meticulously monitor everyone's comings and goings, levy fines that nobody ever really questions." The flash drive Arthur had given me, combined with the Pinewood Finances drive Agnes provided, revealed a staggering, intricate maze of financial transfers. Millions of dollars flowed seamlessly through various Pinewood Gardens HOA accounts into untraceable offshore holdings, then strategically funneled back to companies connected to major defense contractors, cutting-edge tech firms with sensitive government access. "They're not just laundering money," I realized, my stomach sinking further. "They're buying secrets, Jack," Agnes nodded grimly, "and detailed information about people exactly like you, government employees with active security clearances, conveniently living right within their controlled communities." Dawn broke as we painstakingly pieced through the complex web of digital evidence. My phone, which I'd prudently kept powered off, buzzed insistently the moment I turned it back on. 17 missed calls from Director Miller, 1 chilling voicemail. "Jack, where are you? There's a federal warrant out for your arrest. Financial fraud charges. Apparently, damning evidence was found in your home. Call me immediately." "They're framing me," I whispered, the reality cold and stark. "We need allies," Agnes decided decisively. "People Beatrice wouldn't suspect." We risked a carefully planned visit to my other elderly neighbor, Gus Riley, a retired mechanic who'd fought bitterly with the HOA for years over his meticulously maintained collection of classic cars. His large, cluttered garage, hidden beneath vintage Mustangs and mountains of spare parts, became our new clandestine base of operations. "Always thought something was fishy about that bunch," Gus grunted, bringing us mugs of strong, hot coffee. "Those monthly fees keep going up and up, but the community pool's been under repair for nigh on 3 years now." Days blurred into a frantic whirlwind of work. We gathered bank statements, property records, HOA meeting minutes, painstakingly building our case piece by meticulous piece. I discovered Arthur Sterling's background, wasn't just in finance, it extended significantly into cybersecurity. He'd previously worked for a major defense contractor, specifically designing sophisticated financial tracking systems for the government. He knew exactly how to hide illicit money trails. "Look at this," I said excitedly on our fifth day, pointing to a distinct pattern I'd uncovered in the HOA meeting attendance records. Every single time a major financial decision is made, Carl Jenkins somehow makes sure certain specific homeowners can't attend. Sudden scheduling conflicts, last-minute location changes, and those particular homeowners, Agnes added, excitement building in her voice as well, all have something critical in common. They all work in highly sensitive positions, I finished. Military, government contracts, advanced research firms. A loud, unexpected knock interrupted us sharply. Gus appeared at the garage's inner door, looking wide-eyed and nervous, with Maya Sharma, the newest, youngest member of the HOA board, standing hesitantly behind him. "She says she needs to talk to you," Gus explained, clearly uncomfortable. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Agnes instinctively drew her concealed weapon. "How did you find us?" Maya raised her hands quickly, placatingly. "Gus has been complaining about engine noise at all hours for days. It wasn't exactly hard to guess." Her voice shook uncontrollably. "Please, I need your help. I think they're going to kill me next." "Why should we possibly trust you?" I demanded, suspicious. "You're on their board." I didn't know what they really were when I joined," she insisted, tears streaming down her face now. "I honestly thought it was just a neighborhood community thing. Then I found financial records I definitely wasn't supposed to see. Arthur caught me looking." She pulled up the sleeve of her blouse, revealing dark, ugly bruises mottling her upper arm. He said, that was my only warning, that my accident was already planned for next week. "What records?" Agnes pressed, her gun still raised steadily. "Payments," Maya whispered, terrified. "Regular, large payments to someone inside federal law enforcement. They used a code name, Gardner. They've been feeding Beatrice Sterling crucial information about ongoing investigations, including yours." She looked directly at me, her eyes filled with desperate urgency. "Well, they know about this place too, Jack. We have maybe an hour, tops." My mind raced furiously. How did we know this wasn't an elaborate trap? "Because," Maya said quickly, seeming to read my thoughts, "I put a tracker on Beatrice's car." She pulled out her phone, showing us a map with a clearly moving dot. "She's headed directly here, right now, with Carl Jenkins and 2 other men I've never seen before. They have guns." Agnes and I locked eyes, a silent, urgent conversation passing between us in that instant. If Maya was telling the truth, we were in immediate, mortal danger. If she was lying, we were walking straight into a deadly ambush. "My brother, David," Maya continued desperately, her voice cracking, "worked for Arthur Sterling's old accounting firm. He found discrepancies, major ones, in their books. 3 days later, he supposedly killed himself." She choked back a sob. "But David was happy. He'd just gotten engaged. It wasn't suicide, Jack. I know it wasn't." The final pieces clicked brutally into place. "That's why you joined the HOA board," I realized aloud, "to investigate his death from the inside." Maya nodded, tears flowing freely now. Please help me get justice for him." Gus, who'd been listening quietly, absorbing everything, suddenly spoke up, his voice rough. "My security cameras, they caught something odd last night. Thought it was just teenagers messing around." He quickly pulled up grainy footage on his workshop monitor. It showed Beatrice and Carl moving stealthily between houses in the dead of night, placing small, dark objects near gas meters. "Those are remote detonators," Agnes whispered, her face grim. "They're planning something big, something catastrophic, probably to cover their escape. Headlights swept brightly across the driveway outside. Through the grimy workshop window, I spotted Beatrice's luxury SUV turning in, followed closely by a nondescript black sedan. "Back door!" Gus urged, quickly pulling up a hidden trapdoor concealed cleverly beneath a heavy workbench. "Leads straight to the old storm drain system. Used it during the big flood last year." As we scrambled frantically to gather our evidence and escape into the darkness below, I grabbed Maya's arm hard. "If you're playing us, Maya, I swear." "I'm not," she cut me off frantically. "But there's something else. Something else you absolutely need to know. The mole, Gardner, it's your supervisor, Director Miller." The front door of the garage splintered violently open, just as we disappeared down into the narrow, damp concrete tunnel. Angry, shouting voices echoed menacingly behind us, followed immediately by the sharp, unmistakable crack of a single gunshot. "Gus!" I tried to turn back, but Agnes pulled me forward forcefully. "We can't help him if we're dead, Jack," she hissed urgently. "We need to get this evidence to people we can trust." But with a confirmed traitor high up in my own agency and ruthless killers hot on our trail, I had to wonder bleakly, was there anyone left we could trust at all? Glass shattered explosively as a heavy brick crashed through Agnes's living room window. We instinctively dropped flat to the floor as a sudden barrage of gunshots peppered the walls around us. Maya screamed when a bullet whizzed inches past her ear. "They're not just trying to scare us anymore. They actively want us dead," I shouted over the terrifying chaos. The same fancy, rule-obsessed HOA people who once complained bitterly about the precise height of my lawn decorations were now unbelievably trying to kill us. We crawled desperately towards the relative safety of the kitchen, while Beatrice's hired men kicked violently at the splintering front door. Agnes swiftly retrieved her service weapon from a cleverly hidden compartment beneath the kitchen sink. "Take Maya! Get out through the back!" Agnes fired 2 quick warning shots towards the entryway, hopefully buying us precious seconds. "Meet me at the old abandoned textile mill on Route 9. I pulled a trembling Maya through the small laundry room and out into the attached garage. Suddenly, a man dressed entirely in black lunged from the deep shadows beside the garage door, grabbing her arm forcefully. Reacting purely on instinct, I swung my heavy metal flashlight hard, connecting solidly with his temple. He crumpled to the ground without a sound as Maya wrenched herself free. "My car's parked around the block," she gasped breathlessly as we sprinted frantically between darkened houses. "They'll definitely be watching yours." Behind us, more sporadic gunshots and the distinct crash of breaking furniture told me Agnes was putting up a fierce fight. My heart pounded violently in my chest. Was I condemning her, leaving her to die alone? We reached Maya's nondescript sedan and sped away, tires squealing loudly on the pavement. In the rearview mirror, I saw angry orange flames beginning to lick ominously at Agnes's roof. They were burning another building, systematically erasing evidence, just like they'd done with my barn. "Where exactly is this mill?" Maya asked, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel tightly. I don't know any mill," I admitted grimly. "Agnes was sending us away from the real danger wherever she's actually going." Maya's eyes widened in sudden comprehension. "Then she's sacrificing herself," she finished bleakly. "Unless we help her," I countered, determinedly. "How, Jack? Those men are professional killers." I pulled out my phone, activating the recording app I'd thankfully started the moment the brick came through the window. It had captured everything, including Beatrice's unmistakable voice clearly ordering the deadly attack. "By getting irrefutable proof that can't be easily burned or destroyed," I said, playing back a snippet of the audio. "We need more." The HOA keeps all their physical records, financial papers, detailed membership lists, incriminating meeting minutes, everything that physically connects them to their dirty business, locked up tight at the community center. You want to break in there? Now? Maya looked utterly terrified. Jack, they killed my brother for knowing far less. Your brother found something critically important, Maya, I realized suddenly. What exactly did he discover in Arthur Sterling's accounts? Property transfers, she whispered, remembering. Lots and lots of them, all going to obscure shell companies located suspiciously near military bases and research facilities. David thought it was just sophisticated tax evasion. My mind raced, connecting the dots. The HOA isn't just laundering money, I stated with dawning horror. They're actively gathering intelligence. Every house they manage to force people out of gets immediately bought up by one of their shell companies. They become perfect, inconspicuous spots for monitoring everything that goes in and out of those sensitive bases. The community center loomed ahead, dark and silent except for a single light burning in one upstairs office window. Someone was definitely still inside. I can't, Jack, Maya pleaded, her voice barely audible. Wait here then. Keep the engine running, I instructed. I checked my weapon. 6 bullets left. 6 bullets against who knew how many heavily armed enemies. If I'm not back out in exactly 20 minutes, take this phone. Get this recording straight to the state police headquarters, not the local precinct. Understand? The night air felt heavy, oppressive, as I cautiously approached the building. My old lockpicking kit made surprisingly quick work of the side service door, and I slipped silently into the enveloping darkness inside. Muffled voices drifted down from the lit office upstairs, Beatrice and Arthur arguing intensely. We need to leave tonight, Arthur. Immediately, Beatrice hissed, her voice sharp with urgency. The entire operation is blown. Not without the encrypted backup drives, Arthur insisted stubbornly. That's years of critical data. Our buyers certainly won't pay if we show up completely empty-handed. I inched closer, phone held high, recording everything. The office door was slightly ajar, spilling a thin shaft of light into the darkened hallway. Through the narrow crack, I could see detailed maps spread out across a large conference table. Red circles starkly marked locations I instantly recognized. Military bases, sensitive research facilities, critical power plants. Carl should have eliminated them all by now, Beatrice muttered impatiently, checking her watch. My foot accidentally hit a loose floorboard. The resulting creak echoed like a gunshot in the stillness. The voices stopped abruptly. I pressed myself flat against the cool hallway wall as heavy footsteps approached the door. Hello? Arthur called out cautiously. Security? I held my breath, gun held ready. The footsteps paused just inches away on the other side of the door. Then a new sound emerged. Sirens, faint but growing steadily louder in the distance. Someone, somehow, had called the police. Beatrice cursed viciously under her breath. Forget it! She snapped decisively, grabbing the drives from the table. We're leaving, now. As Arthur turned back momentarily toward the desk, I made my move, shouldering hard through the door, weapon raised and leveled. Hands where I can see them, now, I commanded. Beatrice's face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. Arthur lunged suddenly for a desk drawer. Don't, I warned sharply, but Arthur wasn't reaching for a gun. He snatched a small, unfamiliar electronic device from the desktop and mashed a button on its side. A high-pitched, piercing beep filled the small room as every computer screen simultaneously flashed once, then went completely dark. Too late, detective, Beatrice smiled coldly, triumphantly. All the electronic evidence, gone. The sirens outside grew significantly louder, closer. I kept my gun trained steadily on them both. Your hired muscle talked, I bluffed, hoping desperately she'd buy it. We know everything. Beatrice's smile faltered, just slightly. You know nothing, she spat venomously, and you'll be dead long before you ever learn more. Suddenly, the main door behind me crashed open violently. I spun around, expecting Carl Jenkins, but instead saw Agnes, bleeding from a gash on her temple, but blessedly alive, her FBI badge held high and prominent. Federal agent, she announced loudly, her voice ringing with authority. Nobody move. Blood trickled steadily down Agnes's temple, but she kept her gun steady. FBI, on the ground, now. Beatrice actually laughed, a cold, chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. Your pathetic little badge means nothing here. We own half your damn field office. Not anymore, Agnes replied coolly. Your mole, Director Miller, was arrested an hour ago. Something flickered deep in Beatrice's eyes then. Fear, finally breaking through her carefully constructed mask of icy control. But Arthur remained eerily calm. Too calm. The drives are wiped, he reminded her quietly. They have absolutely nothing. A loud crash from outside made us all jump. Carl Jenkins burst violently in through the window, firing wildly into the room. Agnes shoved me down hard as bullets whizzed dangerously overhead, splintering the expensive wood paneling on the walls. Under the desk, I yelled, pulling her down with me into cover. In the ensuing confusion, Beatrice swiftly grabbed a hidden backup gun strapped to her ankle. Simultaneously, Arthur seized a laptop from the conference table and sprinted desperately for the back door. Carl laid down brutally effective covering fire. My training kicked in instantly. I rolled out from under the desk, took careful aim, and shot Carl cleanly in the leg. He fell with a sharp scream, his assault weapon skidding across the polished floor. Arthur, run! Beatrice shrieked, turning her own gun directly on me. Just then, Agnes tackled her hard from behind. They crashed heavily into a row of metal filing cabinets, wrestling fiercely for control of the weapon. I scrambled up quickly to help Agnes, but spotted Arthur escaping rapidly through the back exit. Go, Agnes shouted, managing to pin Beatrice's gun hand beneath her. Don't let him get away with those physical files. I raced after Arthur out into the dark night. He was surprisingly fast, darting expertly between darkened buildings, heading towards the fenced-in community pool area. The laptop clutched tightly against his chest likely contained everything: physical proof of their extensive espionage network, their complex money laundering schemes, their ruthless murders. My lungs burned as I pushed myself harder, closing the distance. Arthur glanced back, his face tight with panic, and stumbled awkwardly on the wet pool deck. The laptop flew from his grasp, sliding precariously towards the water's edge. Stop! I bellowed, finally closing the last few feet between us. Arthur scrambled desperately for the computer, his fingers just brushing against its casing when my shoulder tackle sent us both crashing hard onto the concrete. We grappled violently right at the pool's edge, neither of us willing to give an inch. You ruined everything, he spat, landing a solid punch to my ribs. By killing innocent people? I gasped, blocking his next wild swing. By burning down my barn? Your stupid barn? Arthur laughed harshly between heavy breaths. If you'd just followed the damn rules like everyone else. His knee caught me hard in the stomach. I doubled over in pain as he lunged again for the fallen laptop. My hand shot out instinctively, grabbing his ankle. He kicked free violently, but lost his balance in the process. Arthur toppled backward into the deep end of the pool with a loud splash, dragging the crucial laptop down with him into the chlorinated water. "No!" he cried out in despair as the water completely engulfed the electronic device. Sparks flickered eerily beneath the surface for a moment before dying out completely. I staggered slowly to my feet as Arthur thrashed uselessly in the water, watching his precious, irreplaceable data die before his eyes. Blue and red lights flashed everywhere as multiple police cars surrounded the community center. Backup had finally, truly arrived. Officers hauled a sputtering, defeated Arthur from the pool while I sagged weakly against the chain-link fence, utterly exhausted. Paramedics attended to my various cuts and bruises as more agents swarmed the entire area, securing the scene. "The laptop's ruined," I told Agnes grimly when she found me minutes later, her own head wound, now neatly bandaged. All that physical evidence, gone. She simply smiled, holding up a small black object. "USB backup drive. Found it taped securely under Beatrice's desk while we were negotiating," she explained. "Old spy trick. Always keep a separate copy of what you're selling." 2 days later, I sat in the main briefing room of the FBI field office, watching the coordinated culmination of the entire operation unfold on multiple large screens. 17 simultaneous raids across 12 states hit suspect HOA offices and related businesses. The conspiracy was vast, far larger than we'd initially suspected. Over 30 HOA board members and associates were implicated nationwide. Millions in illicit foreign payments were traced. Dozens of compromised properties located strategically near sensitive government and military installations were identified and secured. Beatrice/Elena and Arthur refused to talk, invoking their rights immediately. However, Carl Jenkins, facing serious federal charges, sang like a proverbial bird, once offered a reduced sentence deal. Maya Sharma positively identified her brother's killers from detailed photo lineups. The guilt-ridden neighbor who'd helped Carl burn my barn confessed to everything. My former boss, Director Miller, arrived looking grave and deeply humbled. "Jack, I owe you a profound apology," he admitted somberly. "We should have trusted you from the beginning." "Someone leaked my identity, Director," I reminded him pointedly. "And they will face charges," he assured me firmly. "Your suspension is hereby lifted, effective immediately, with full commendation for exceptional service." A month passed. I stood on the spot where my barn once stood, now just a bare concrete foundation. The disgraced Pinewood Gardens HOA had been officially disbanded by court order, replaced by a simple, functional neighborhood council elected by an actual democratic vote of the residents. Agnes joined me, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "Thinking about rebuilding?" she asked gently. "Maybe," I mused, looking around at the familiar houses. "Something different this time, though. Maybe a community workshop, open to the whole neighborhood. A place where people can actually work together, you know? Community over arbitrary rules." She smiled warmly. "Exactly." I took a slow sip of coffee. Though I think I'm definitely keeping my day job. Considerably less excitement. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Maya. She'd been appointed to the new neighborhood council, determined, she wrote, to help create something honest and transparent from the ashes of the corruption. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the evening sky in fiery shades of orange and purple, I realized something powerful. My fight hadn't just been about saving a barn or defending my property rights. Ultimately, it had exposed the insidious rot that can quietly grow when good people stop paying close attention, when they willingly surrender control to those who desperately crave power for its own sake. "You know," Agnes said quietly beside me, "most spies I've dealt with use sophisticated technology, blackmail, or insider threats. I've never actually seen one use an HOA before." That's precisely what made it so potentially perfect, wasn't it, Dewey? I replied. Whoever suspects the person meticulously complaining about your grass height is actually tracking military troop movements. We laughed together then. Neighbors now, bound by something far stronger and more meaningful than property lines or restrictive covenants. The first stars began to appear overhead as residents started gathering for an impromptu block party on the empty lot where Beatrice and Arthur Sterling's house once stood, before it was seized by the federal government. Sometimes, fighting for your home means much more than just defending a physical building. Sometimes it means saving an entire community from the very people who falsely claim to protect it. This story serves as a stark reminder. Danger doesn't always announce itself with flashing lights or overt threats. Sometimes the greatest perils fester quietly beneath the surface of perceived normalcy, thriving on complacency and the blind acceptance of authority. It highlights the critical importance of questioning procedures, verifying information, and remaining vigilant within our own communities. Never underestimate the potential for corruption, even in the most seemingly mundane settings, and always value transparency and active participation in local governance. What did you think of Jack's harrowing ordeal and the shocking conspiracy hidden within Pinewood Gardens? Could something like this happen in your neighborhood? Share your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more thrilling narratives and suspenseful tales.